Welcome to AFI Fest presented by Audi. My name is Sarah Harris. I'm the Director of Programming for AFI Festivals. First, I want to thank all of our supporters of the festival, our presenting sponsor, Audi, our AFI members, and you, our audience. Thanks for joining us. I'm thrilled to be here today with the team from Luxor, including our director, Zeina Durra, and our cast, Andrea, Risenborough, and Karim, Saleh. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So, Zeina, I'm going to start with a question for you, but I believe this particular story, kind of the origin of it, was based on a dream that you had. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was really bummed out because a film that I'd been putting together for a really long time since my first movie, I just been told that I had to make another film. And that night I went to bed and I had a dream about Luxor, and it was full of these kind of, it was basically the emotional content of the movie that we made, but in a kind of dream form. So then I just had this, I woke up and I was talking to my DP, who's a friend of mine. I'd never shot with her before, like a film, just experimental stuff. And we were talking and I told her, you know, I think this is the film. She goes, yeah, this sounds like a great movie. And we went through like I basically broke it down with her. And then I said, you know what, this is a crazy idea, but do you want to come to Luxor with me and make a film for like literally nothing? I'm going to call this Egyptian producer I know, and let's just do it with like a 5-man crew in like 15 days or whatever. And then the Egyptian producer was in town because it was the BFI London Film Festival. And so he actually saw me the next day, and then everything came together really quickly, which was really amazing. And that's never happened to me before. I mean, I've been working on the other film for years. Yeah, so.
Kind of meant to be.
Yeah.
I think in a way it's as special as like the kind of mysterious what happens in the film of how things come together. The film itself kind of came together that way too, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Were you just totally game by the script at first, like by reading the script, and how were you approached to get involved at what? Because it seems like it was such a quick project to pull together. How did you get involved in it so quickly?
I just really loved the script. I really loved Zeina's first film. I really loved the script. There was this particular person in her first film who I sort of couldn't get out of my head. That was Karim. I read the script and it's, I mean, it was such a beautiful love story. Is firstly what I felt. Mm-hmm. Aside from everything that the character had been through, there was something there was just a sort of simplicity and a purity about coming back to a place that she felt connected. And so that was really what drew me to it. And it was incredible to be there. It was something so. And then, you know, I mean, the other thing is that I found out that this person who I could remember from Imperialists was then going to play opposite me, and so it just kind of was I didn't think much about doing it. I just kind of got on a plane.
So yeah, of course, the love story aspect was an extremely attractive thing, but there's something else there. It's that when you think of sort of a Middle Eastern perspective on things, it's really difficult to find a perspective that is not either self-orientalizing or a perspective that is focused on misery in an exploitative kind of way, or something that is from a, you know, either somebody who doesn't have an experience of the place or somebody who is too involved in the place and they're almost like venting their trauma. There's something in Zeina's writing where all these perspectives are balanced really well. So the war in Syria is in the backdrop. Even the love story to a certain extent is secondary to the internal psychological journey of her protagonist, who is probably Middle Eastern, but not necessarily a Middle Eastern actor. I think in terms of what it means for cinema to have people of different culture collaborate and integrate you know, skins that are not necessarily their own, but for a director to allow for that exploration is really fascinating to me, because I feel like everybody else makes the mistake of being so literal when it comes to those places. And so Zeina's ability to transcend the circumstances and to really have a creative process that, as she explained earlier, stems not only from her art, but also from a most intimate part of herself, you know, a dream, and to be able to compose with these things makes her a very attractive director from my perspective, for, you know, for somebody who identifies the way I identify. And there's the fact that when we worked together the first time, I had really enjoyed it. You know, it was, she knew what she wanted, but she also, you know, she gave me a lot of space when we worked in New York on Imperialists Are Still Alive. So I was looking forward to collaborating again.
Yeah. Well, and so that kind of segues into my next, I guess, conversation point, which is what I find so striking is how Zeina, you created a world of processing trauma and this world of reflection, of choices, and it's such a kind of ambitious project to be immersed mentally, but on the screen. I feel like this is one of the few films I've seen that does that effectively. I'm kind of curious how you decided to approach the idea that way, and perhaps what were the challenges as you were creating the film to kind of have this meditation of trauma and choice and reflection.
So it's funny because I didn't know how accessible my perception or experience of trauma was until I made this film. And that was really interesting for me because I think a lot of it, it happened in two ways. I'm always quite rigorous about my research. So I went to the Doctors Without Borders clinic on the Syrian-Jordanian border. My parents now live in Amman, and it's really only like an hour and something away from their house. And I went there and I interviewed surgeons on the front line. And I think if you're a writer and you're also really into psychology, you can pretty much pick up the themes from when you're speaking to people, and then so that was one aspect of it. But I think the other aspect, and this is something which some people might argue with, but I think the universality of the film kind of gets rid of their arguments or answers their arguments, is that really when you come, like, you know, I'm a British-born Bosnian, Palestinian, Jordanian, Lebanese kid. I call myself a kid, but wishing I'm a kid. And I think that you cannot help but like inherit and view the world through a lot of that trauma, even if you've lived outside, you know. And it's perhaps an ability to process it like once removed, so you understand those emotions. But maybe that's why, because you're not in it. Like, I wasn't in Bosnia. My grandmother was the one who was there with my cousins, and they all fought and you know, escaped on a UN bus and sought asylum in England. My parents left the civil war literally you know, the year that I was born in Beirut. You know, my mom was born in Palestine in 1948, and she was born in the fighting. So like, it's just this whole kind of thing. So I think you just inherit this kind of ability to understand trauma, or and I think perhaps that's how it worked, because it came from a really real place. And I just really, because I'm quite, I like humor, and I always make a lot of jokes, and my first film was very much like that, and this film had moments of that, but it was very much the opposite. And I think that in this film I really had to rein myself back, because I was really just trying to listen to myself without evading anything. And that was the most interesting part of making this film. And then when you work with like Andrea, I mean, honestly, it could have gone so wrong, because it could have been really hokey. It could have been like white girl in Africa walking around the ruins, you know, and I'm not a white girl. It's just like, oh my God, how do I do this, you know? And I mean, I am and I'm not. It's very, my identity is very complicated, obviously. So it was really great to work with someone as brilliant as Andrea, who can just transcend that stuff and really understand where that character was coming from. And on top of that, my mom reckons she could be Syrian. So that really helped, because you never allude to her background, but maybe there's a Syrian grandma in there or a Lebanese grandma, you don't know. And that's what's so interesting about the character, because like half the time no one knows where I'm from, or when my kids, no one knows where they're from. And I find that, like Karim was talking about identity, it's like there's so many, there are like 300 million Arabs, Karim, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And they range literally from looking like Andrea to being like, black. So you have so many different races within this group, which is called the Arabs. And I find that it's so interesting that people will only cast you or look for actors that look a certain way. You know, having said that, I did choose Andrea because of her acting skills, and she didn't necessarily have to be Middle Eastern. It wasn't really about that. She could have been like an English doctor out there. It was more about using someone who could tap into that like pain, and then the idea of finding hope through analyzing your past and trying to like start again, which I think is quite relevant for everyone, especially now. Weirdly, the film is more relevant now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the thing, is it's because I saw this at the beginning of the year, and it had some kind of particular context, and now, and having rewatched it a few times since, for this, is like it's an emotional experience as a viewer to watch now and kind of consider all these choices from the last year or not. So
yeah, and also like where it talks about a lot. Remember when you guys were on the Nile and you're like thinking like, don't you wish the way the world used to be? And then we do the Gramsci quote. I mean, it's really about like, it's just crazy how, I just read an article just literally 5 minutes ago, how people, I mean, I've been avoiding the fact that it's completely changed, because in Europe, we can pretend, like you guys can't. You've got forest fires, an earthquake, and race riots, and fascism. We have that, but it's slightly less. We have all the same things, but slightly less. Like I could still go out. I went to a coffee shop. I went here, I went there. Like it's, I have a mask on, which is a bit surreal, but like it's still, life is going on. Where you guys are, it's really a very different vibe. And so for me, I'm in denial about this change, really, I think. And then slowly now, because I think we're heading towards another lockdown and the numbers are rising, you're like, wow, this is really the new reality. When can I see my parents again? When can I get on a plane again to see, that's the kind of, that's when the film becomes really relevant, I think. Anyway, I will let the others talk now.
In a film like this, you get to follow a character who actually has the ability to process what they're going through. And so it was just like, as I was listening to this and as I was sort of celebrating what film can do through Andrea's performance and Zeina's writing, I was also thinking about all the people who don't have an outlet and who don't get to, to process these things and to get to know themselves. And I almost felt like, we're lucky to be able to do this.
That's so true. I think that's why I'm so lucky to make films, because it's just like therapy. I discussed that in another, I always listen, it's just therapy to make this, to be so lucky to be able to do this and to be able to like work things out with a group of very brilliant, creative people that can, I think it was, and that I remember for Karim, the process was, I'm very old friends with Karim, and I know, I hope you don't mind disclosing this, but when we were around an amazing archaeologist called Salima Ikram, who is literally like she must be a reincarnated pharaoh. I mean, she's just beyond amazing. And she was our main kind of guide into that world of archaeology.
Yes, I think being in a place where you're surrounded by such early constructs of civilization, there's a sense of total timelessness being there. The spirituality of the place is the thing that is there first. But to get connected to that spirituality, sometimes to do it through civilization's objects almost, visually, to connect yourself to a different time, can be a really profound experience. The reminder that there is something eternal, and it's been celebrated in this one place for a long time. And in a sense, I felt like it was almost being out of time, being there for 3 weeks, and meeting one another. And then the strange thing is, as we were meeting one another, and this old love story was then kind of reflowering through this really barren and bleak trauma that this woman's just been through. It was all being filmed. It was all being filmed, which almost felt secondary. I mean, you know, I feel like Zeina created that environment through what she'd written and through really setting it in a place where she understood that time was relative. It wasn't, you know, just it wasn't the most important thing that we were dealing with. We were dealing with something far greater than either of us, than any of us who were making the film. It felt very special.
Everyone went deep into it. Even like the grips were hearing messages. I mean, like everyone was in this like psychic world. It was kind of mad, like, you know, because normally those are the guys you're like, oh my god, they're going to totally not get this place as holy, and they're going to totally disrespect the energy, and this is terrible, like all like that. And they were like, oh my god, you know, they all came in and everyone was giving offerings, and it was kind of fun like that, because everyone kind of bought into it together. And so I think, because also we weren't a very big crew. I mean, we were pretty much doing, everyone was helping out, you know. It wasn't a big set, so that also helped the intimacy.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of switch gears slightly, because you mentioned this earlier, Zeina, but there are pieces of humor in this, and it is, you know, it's a very kind of heavy reflection, but the humor in it I think is really beautiful as well. And we have to talk about my new favorite dance scene, because it's just so perfect. And I think I was reading that, like, Andrea, this performance was with regular hotel cast. Is that or what? Talk a little bit about making that scene, because it is just, I think both preparing mentally for just that release is interesting, but also, like, was there actually any choreography to this, or was it just like you go like?
Yeah, no, my main inspiration was Flashdance, and I just sort of rewatched that, you know, in the days leading up. No, it wasn't. We were, yeah. Unintentionally, yes, we were surrounded by real hotel cast. We had a bit of a frolic and scramble to try and get that scene together at the end, but I think what it gave the scene and finally was this incredible spontaneity, and it was such a purge, I think, for Hana, for the character that I play. It was such a in spite of herself, she's letting go of things that she's perhaps not even ready to let go of, and she's doing it in front of the only person that can see her, you know, can sort of witness her in her many incarnations as a human.
I don't know, I feel like everyone's been there, where they just have to let go, and you build on that throughout the film, and then you have this moment, and then it carries into the hallway, where it is like a separate emotional kind of, really, it's really beautiful, and but also kind of fun. Like it's really, really great. So Zeina, you mentioned this at the
I just want to say something about the dance scene. Like, it's the first time I've worked, because I was born and brought up in England, but I went to NYU grad film, so I always worked with American actors, or like my Elodie was French. What I loved about this dance scene is that Andrea and me have a shorthand, because we're like English schoolgirls. And so, like, when she was doing stuff, I would just say to just do it, she just get it. She would get because and it really, really made me realize how English I really am, because we could just speak almost like psychically about the things that Hana would do. And that was all, it was really fun. And it was also therapeutic for me to come to terms with my English identity, because, you know, it's always, you know, tricky things sometimes. Anyway, so what were you going to ask?
Well, you mentioned this earlier, but I think it's remarkable that, so you had just had a child before this, and is your third child, I think.
Yeah.
And you go right into the shoot, and kudos. That's really all I wanted to say, is kudos. As a mother myself, I'm like, it's amazing. So
it's easier. Like, I couldn't take him now. Now he'd want to, like, he fell in love with Andrea and like would just stare at her, and so now he would just be crying because he'd want to go to her, and he'd be like screaming out her name, whereas then he was just like a baby that just stared and maybe made more noise. Remember, he would just stare, And you know, I think, I mean, when Karim used to say when we didn't have the kids on set, like he would get sad, right? Like everyone really missed the children when they weren't around, because it kind of just made everything really good. Because my DP had her kids, and then my elder two came out, and it was just like this, you know, it was just kind of just made it a bit more mellow. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that.
Did it make it feel more of a family experience compared to other shoots? I don't know.
It was beautiful. It was generational. You know, we were in such an historical place. And they were just so light and wonderful and lovely. And they're in the film. They're in the film, different parts.
Yeah.
It was magical to have them there.
There was a group of I think 4 little girls or 3, and they were all sort of cheerleaders for the relationship. So they got really interested in whether Hana and Sultan loved each other, whether we the actors were involved with each other in that way, and it became almost like this kind of parallel little soap opera that they were following on their own terms. And essentially between takes I was always being grilled by those little girls about whether I had real feelings for Andrea or not, or whether it was just acting. And there was so much anticipation on their part. I feel that they really supported they were the great cheerleaders of the love story were the girls, you know.
That's amazing. Well, I'm afraid we have to wrap it up. I still have like so many questions. I wanted like the Grateful Dead reference, and there's just so many.
Wait, quickly. That is real. That is real. So I was doing some Googling about like female cults, Luxor, ancient female cults, you know, when I was writing. I was just trying to find any kind of thing. And then this woman's name came up. So I emailed her, and she's like, oh, that's so embarrassing. That's still online. That was like in the 70s. I haven't done that for years. She goes, but you know, I said, so why did you go to Luxor? And then we had this like long, actually my first Zoom conversation was with her, because she used Zoom back before no one else seemed to. And she's like in Oregon. Oh, where is she? Oregon, I think. And she goes, yeah, you know, well, literally, she said that line. I first went out to Luxor because my husband managed the Grateful Dead, and they did the first rock concert in Cairo in '78. And then I went to Luxor and I got hooked. I swear to God, I was like, how could I not thank you for this amazing thing.
Amazing. Well, I am so grateful that you all joined us to talk about the film today. It's really a magnificent film, one of my favorites of the year, and I congratulate you on finishing it, getting it in all these festivals, and now having a distributor with Samuel Golden. So it's really exciting to see this film making it out into the world right now. So thank you so much for being here. And to all of our viewers at home, you can find us on social media, #AFIFest, and tell your friends about Luxor. It's great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.